Our second lesson is from the book of Daniel. This is a story of Daniel doing well, but under captivity, asking for better food to eat so that he could stay healthy, but known among the people there as a wise and a good man. So the king had a dream, similar to Pharaoh having the dream back in the book of Genesis. Where is somebody to interpret it? So they speak about Daniel. They say, inasmuch as this man has an excellent spirit, he has knowledge and understanding, he can interpret dreams, solving riddles, and explaining enigmas. So they said, this can be found in Daniel, whom the king had named Belteshazzar. So now let Daniel be called, and he will give its interpretation of the dream to the king. So Daniel was brought, and he came before the king. And the king spoke and said to Daniel, are you that Daniel who is one of the captives from Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard of you, that the Spirit of God is in you, and that the light and the understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now, the wise men, the astrologers, they have brought this up before me, that you should read the writing and make known to me its interpretation. For they could not give me its interpretation. And I've heard of you that you can give interpretations and explain enigmas. Now, if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed in purple and have a chain of gold around your neck. You shall be third ruler of the kingdom. Then Daniel answered, and he said before the king, let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing of the king, and I will make known to him the interpretation. Amen. And our final lesson is from the work Arcana Coelestia. It's concerning the statement read earlier about bringing all these gifts, all the things that were required and asked for in order to build the tabernacle, to build the Ark of the Covenant, to build all the things for this worship center for these people. Arcana Coelestia 99:38 reads, they were called gifts and offerings made to Jehovah, although Jehovah, that is the Lord, does not accept any gifts or offerings, but gives to everyone freely. Nevertheless, he wills that these things should come from a person as if from themselves, provided it is acknowledged that they are not from themselves, but from the Lord. For it is the Lord that imparts the affection of doing good from love, and the affection of speaking truth from faith. But the affection itself flows in from the Lord, and it appears as if it were in the person, thus from the person. For whatever anyone does from the affection which is of love, they do from their life, because love is the life of everyone. From this it is evident that what are called gifts and offerings made to the Lord by a person are, in their essence, gifts and offerings made to the person by the Lord. For their being called gifts and offerings is from the appearance. All who are wise in heart see this appearance, not so the simple. And yet the gifts and the offerings of the simple are grateful insofar as they are offered from ignorance which is of innocence. Innocence is the good of love to the Lord, and it dwells in ignorance, especially with the wise in heart. For they who are wise in heart know and perceive that there is nothing of wisdom from themselves or in themselves, and that everything of wisdom is from the Lord. That is, everything of the good of love and everything of the truth of faith. Therefore, even with the wise, their innocence dwells in ignorance. Here are the readings from the Word. Blessed are those who hear the Word of God and keep it. Our lesson from the Arcana Coelestia tells us that these gifts and offerings, overflowing with abundance, such that the artist had to say, stop bringing everything to us. We've got enough. We've got more than enough. The appearance is when we're giving that we're doing a great thing. We want to give and give and give, especially if we have plenty. And it's a strange thing that these slaves out of Egypt managed to borrow from the Egyptians, managed to take so much. The Egyptians were ready to get rid of them. All those plagues, they knew where they were coming from. And the Egyptians who chased after the Israelites when they were leaving were ready to slaughter them for all the plagues, plus they took all this plunder. How they got it, it's not really explained. We refer to it as borrowing from the Egyptians. Of course, they never gave it back. It wasn't that kind of borrowing. But they had plenty. They had so much that they could build this ark. They could build the tabernacle and the ark and have plenty left over. The book of Exodus goes into all the details of how each plank was carved and covered with gold, how each of the bars that held the thing together had to be placed a certain distance from everything else, how the many layers of the curtains that covered over the tabernacle, and the division of the curtains between the holy place and the Holy of Holies, and the embroidery on the curtain for the Holy of... It's all covered in minute detail. And how did Moses write that all down? He had seen the image. He had seen the details of this presented to him in spiritual vision. Now, we're really used to that in the new church because we've been reading about the way the Lord presented the second coming to Swedenborg by means of him going into the spiritual world and having visions. And so we ourselves talk about the Nucleate temple that Swedenborg saw as an image, an idea of what a new church temple is to be like. Not necessarily the physical arrangements of the temple, but the idea that now it is permitted, it says over top of the door to the Nucleate temple, now it is permitted for us to enter into the mysterious things of faith with our understanding. Moses was brought by the Lord in a vision to see all the things having to do with the arrangement for the details and construction of the tabernacle. As Swedenborg saw the Nucleate temple, as Swedenborg saw the heavens of the most ancient, the heavens of the ancients, the other heavens, the world of spirits, the hells, the various things that are all recorded in our teachings in the new church. We're given these powerful visions and images of the Lord, of His kingdom, and of ourselves as being part of the Lord's kingdom. You can't have one without the other. We can't individually be new church people, be Christians, be good angelic characters in isolation, apart from others. We have to become part of the body of the Lord. Which is why the second image is a good one to also focus on. Look at this community. Now, they weren't all happy all the time. Matter of fact, there was a lot of grumbling going on when the children of Israel were encamped. And in fact, for the 40 years in the wilderness, it was representative of a state of temptation. And yet they were told to organize in a certain way. They were told that the camps of each of the tribes should be this way, a certain arrangement. And the writings of the new church explain that that arrangement is given in different ways throughout the books of the Old and New Testament. So that when you come to the book of Revelation, the 12 tribes of Israel are named in a different order. And it represents the shift that takes place in our own spiritual priorities as the Lord leads us through temptations, through our wilderness states, into a new order of heaven that he gives to us. The whole purpose of this story is to represent the Lord's divine human, to give us an image or an analogy of heaven and the human of the divine that we need to come into. And that sort of thing, all the details, can be overwhelming. If you've read through the Arcana and you've gotten to that section, you may just think, wow, there's a lot of information here, a lot of lists of things. But we know that, in fact, every verse of the Word, whether it's the Old Testament, the New Testament, or the Word of the new church, it connects with members of, and I'm pointing to the natural kingdom of the Israelites in the valley, but every idea, every concept, every word connects us spiritually with the whole of heaven. It's a wonderful thing. And I think we can appreciate it more and more as we connect with each other, not effortlessly, but almost effortlessly, in terms of communicating across the world, across the globe, with people that we want to have a meeting with, or have a Zoom call, or a Skype call, or even a phone call. Just pick up the phone and talk with your ear and your mouth and not have to use your eyes. That wonderful ability to communicate and connect is representative of a heavenly state. We all long for a sense of belonging. We all long to receive the gifts from the Lord and give them back. And as the lesson from the Arcana says, we can't give anything to the Lord. Imagine the ant or the worm or the daisy giving something to the sun. But that's the appearance. And that's the beauty of the Lord giving us our freedom and our rationality, is for us to be able to receive from the Lord all the divine blessings of life and to give back. We only give what is good back if it's really good. It's come from the Lord to begin with. And to make that acknowledgement is a part of wisdom. Now it says in our lesson that the simple may not see the appearance and may feel like they have to do good because that's what's in their heart. And they might not reflect upon, well, it's been put into your heart by the Lord. Okay, leave the fine print alone. Do good anyway. Simply do good. But we're told the wiser we become, the more we reflect on, it's all the Lord's. All of this arrangement is God's. Everything we're thinking is the Lord's. Everything that's good that connects us with one another is from the Lord. How we feel about our life on earth. If we're enjoying the music that we have in church, if we're enjoying the visuals that we can see, if we're enjoying the priest teaching, all these things that are good connect us with the Lord and connect us with each other. I want to give some credit to the latest edition of New Church Life, which you may or may not receive or have a subscription to. In it, there's an editorial by Jeremy Simmons about belonging, and I want to read from one section of that. Related to our need for belonging, he quotes the work Heaven and Hell, and I'd like to read, "Kindred spirits gravitate towards each other spontaneously, as it were, for with each other they feel as though they are with their own family and at home, while with others they feel like they're with foreigners, as if they were abroad. When they are with kindred spirits, they enjoy the fulfillment of freedom and find life totally delightful." Now, this editorial is connected with the pandemic and marking the year that has passed under various forms of lockdown and restrictions. Some people say, is there ever going to be a sermon where you don't mention the pandemic, Pastor? It's what we're living in, its conditions. I wonder if the children of Israel in the 40 years of wandering, whether they ever said to another person something that didn't have to do with the fact that they're out in the wilderness eating manna, having to chase or grab quail, and they don't have what they want. Did they ever, well, we know they complained all the time. Did they ever have conversations that didn't actually place them in the context of their spiritual journey? their natural journey. And the two are so closely related. The way we're handling our own isolation socially from each other because we have to keep our distance, because we can't gather in the church, the way we're handling that is our spiritual work. It's very important to recognize if everything were great, actually sometimes we don't pay that much attention to our spiritual work when everything's great, do we? Lots of times it's triggering events. It's hitting a bottom on some level. It's hitting something hard that makes us reflect and think, wow, this has been my life. This is what my life is up to, has brought me to right now. And, things aren't as good as I'd like them to be. Things are different. How's my spiritual life? How's your spiritual life? Now that there are some conditions that are not so great. One of the things that Jeremy mentions in this article is a reflection on the difference between how people felt isolated a number of years ago and how they feel isolated today. Because our spiritual isolation and our social isolation, again, are connected. Social isolation, he says, is a growing epidemic, one that's increasingly recognized as having dire physical, mental, and emotional consequences. Since 1980, the percentage of people in North America who say they're lonely has doubled from 20% to 40%. Are you feeling isolated? Are you feeling lonely? Is it worse now because we can't socialize the way we used to? And what can you do about that? That's an important part. Some of us can't do much about feeling socially isolated or feeling lonely. But a lot of times, the Lord's giving us the opportunity to look at our own sense of isolation and say, well, what are you doing? How are you connecting with others? We can't exist without connecting to others. No matter what we're doing, no matter how isolated we are individually or in the natural world, spiritually, we have to be connected with other people. There's a great illustration of this in the work Conjugal Love. When the Lord's revealing the truth that marriage love and the connection between spouses, which is the universal love of connection for all people, whether you're married or not, but that there's a special connection that takes place, and that we, as males or females, can only receive certain things from the opposite sex. Well, certain men listening to this said, that's just not true. I love women, and I don't get that love from women. It's my love. And so an experiment took place where all the feminine, all the sphere of the feminine was removed from these men. And they looked at each other and they said, what is a woman anyway? They had no concept left of what it is to be in a relationship with a member of the opposite sex. It was removed because everything we feel for anyone, whether it's a member of the opposite sex, whether it's our parents, our children, our cousins, our family members, our co-workers, everything that we feel that has a connection between us and another person comes from our spiritual relationships in the other world. And that's our work to develop. And how do we develop that? We develop it by means of reading the Word and connecting with societies of heaven that are in those passages. And even if it's a simple matter of simply saying the blessing or the grace at a meal, or simply saying the Lord's Prayer at night, or simply saying some things that come from the Lord's Word, whether as you're driving down the road and you get cut off and you feel really angry and you simply say, Lord, help me forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. And you're thinking about the Lord's love for us, the words He spoke when He was being crucified. Saying ideas or concepts or very passages from the Word in everyday life keeps us connected. That's our job. Nobody can force you to do it, but we have to force ourselves to stay in connection with the Lord through His Word. It's really important. It helps us feel connected. It helps us remove that sense of isolation. And it isn't a universal panacea that works for everybody. But it will work for everybody at certain times. We need to stay connected. And I want to read another passage that's, again, mentioned in this editorial. It is the continual object of the divine providence that a person become a heaven in a human form, and so an image of the Lord. The inmost object is that people may be in this or that place in heaven, or this or that place in the Lord's divine human, which is heaven, and thus they are in the Lord. Now that's a common saying, or a common passage in the writings, to talk about us belonging to a place in heaven. And again, our spiritual work, when feeling isolated or feeling disconnected, is to do what will bring us into that sense of belonging with this or that group of people like-minded to us. And that might be coming onto the fellowship after church and just seeing people's faces and interacting with them. It might be a phone call, it might be a Zoom call, or some other way of trying to connect and stay connected and find out, how are you doing? To say to another person, how are you doing? And what you're doing is emulating these gifts from the Lord. When we say to someone else, we ask that question, we're offering to them the Lord's love. How are you doing? I want to know what's going on for you. Now that truly doesn't come from me or from you. It comes from the Lord. To make those connections and to build connections, to build a people who are the Lord's heaven on earth. That's the Lord's work. And if we're really wise, we'll know that we don't know how it's all going to happen. We know that it does happen. The subject of the sermon that's written out is wisdom in ignorance. A wise heart in ignorance. Innocence in ignorance. Because we can't know everything about the connections that are being made or how we're affecting other people. Know that it's important that we try. That we try to reach out. When you're walking down the street, or going out for a walk, or even driving along the road, do you have an attitude of trying to be friendly to the people around you? Or are you pretty much with your head down, mind my own business, don't need to look at people, don't need to feel connected with anybody? Can we try to keep that cheerful affect and reach out to other people, even if it's just visually, even if we can't touch or don't want to get too close? Can we try to maintain that connection? We don't know what it's going to do for another person. So the truly wise, I'll end with this from that passage in the Arcana, the truly wise, they know. Even with the wise, innocence dwells in ignorance. Nunc licet, now it is permitted to enter into the mysteries of faith with the understanding. That doesn't mean we know everything. As a matter of fact, when we enter into the mysteries of faith with our understanding, we realize how much, more and more we realize how much we are ignorant of so many things. And that's the true gift of wisdom. That's the true gift we receive from the Lord, is to know we can give it all away and we'll never run out. The Lord will always give us the gifts, even if it looks like we're giving to others. We have to constantly be willing to give in order for the Lord to continue to give to us. Amen.